Hello, everyone. I'm here with Sean Wainsteim. He is the director creator of Demon Box. And that was a film that we were able to see at Film Quest this past year. And so we're going to talk about some of your creative process, maybe, and some of your inspirations and kind of go from there. Is that good with you?
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Kind of starting off, let me just ask from your point of view how you pitch this. If you were having someone saying, "What is Demon Box?" What would you tell them?
I don't know. It's everything. Someone asked me in the lineup to the bathroom before it went on. They said, "So, Demon Box, is it a horror film?" I'm like, I don't know. You tell me afterwards. And I saw him afterwards. I'm like, "Well, is it a horror film?" And he went like, so I guess what it started as is different than what it ended up as. The film was originally conceived 10 years ago. So there's a 10-year process of making the film. And over that time, I had a son who was born and I had a grandfather who passed away. And I built a film that I really liked and felt really good about after we sort of struggled to make it. Um, and then it got denied from a ton of festivals. And then I went back and looked at it and I took all that personally, and you shouldn't take that stuff personally because it's always a crapshoot, and depending what a programmer wants. Let me turn off that alarm to say that we're going to talk now. Um, Also to turn off the water so it doesn't freeze. People remember to turn off your water if you're below freezing temperatures, depending where you are. Um, the So I went back and I looked at the film and I tried to engage with it honestly and engage with the whole process honestly, and I added a layer of narration which was supposed to be on there anyway, um, to look at sort of how I felt about everything and how I felt about the rejections, and I tried to be as frank and blunt and hopefully a little bit funny and genuine as I could, and I probably have 17,000 versions of that, and recorded some of that in a closet. At one point, I was just sort of burst into tears, and then I was editing my own tears. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're editing your own tears on a meta layer of voiceover while you're talking about a film that you made, and you're just crying while you're cutting it, and you're like, "These tears are not good. This ugly cry is not working in this movie. This is my tears are not good enough. There's not good enough emotion here." But what the film is I sort of avoided kind of diving into the center of what's probably at the center of all my work over the years. I've sort of always drawn to darker fairy tale type stories, and that goes back to being a kid. And I think a lot of that goes back to just growing up hearing stories from people from concentration camps and people who lost everyone in the Holocaust. Um, Dramatic pause. So all of the stories I do generally will have a darker element or a magic realism element or some kids in peril. And I had never kind of jumped into the center of that and sort of seen what that is. And I think even starting to work on this film, uh, you start to sort of, that's when I started to make some connections, even probably before my son was born. But the sort of the link, at least as a kid, to like, oh, Hansel and Gretel are going to get thrown in an oven. My family members were thrown into ovens. Like there's this weird kind of literal thing, and no matter how scary the fairy tales are, they weren't real, and the stories I knew were real because we didn't have any family, and there's people with numbers in their arms, and uh, that stuff was, I guess, I don't know if I was afraid to look into it, into those sort of moments. I generally like to talk about, do serious work without taking myself too seriously. So diving into that, uh, into an area that feels pretty damn well covered in terms of like, there's a lot of Holocaust films. Do we need another one? But I hadn't seen one that was really dealing with how that affected people generationally. And sort of, so, a couple generations removed, you're still getting this ripples of trauma and waves of things. And so that's sort of the genesis of it. And I sat down with a friend of mine who's a playwright, Aurora de Pena, who's phenomenal. I love her plays. I'd be watching her play, and it'd be oh, they're all just having a fun time, and here's this very light thing, and it's really funny and great. And then three-quarters of the way through, you're like, oh my God, this is what the play's about. Oh, it just hits you. You're like, oh fuck, this is okay, yeah. So I'm like, I want that for mine. And so we went through a few rounds of writing, and again, I love her work, and I'm like, whatever she gives me, we're just gonna go make it, and it's gonna be true and great. And everything was so tied to my personal story. I'm like, that is not accurate at all. So like I ended up kind of whittling out a lot of the beautiful stuff that she had done to kind of make it more resonant with me and who I was, and it sort of became more personal. But the having the hybrid of genesis of her in there was fantastic, and it gave it that whole extra layer of sort of, we have some shared sensibilities, but that sort of lyrical quality that I love in her work was all that wouldn't have happened without her. Um, and then as I keep going on, uh, once my son was born, I'm like, okay, well, I have to now include him because this is about generational trauma, and the stuff affected me in a way. So like, how am I passing this on to him? Should I pass it on to him? What is the way to articulate that? Is this film the point of that? There's good stuff that came from this too, but also very bad stuff. And there's like, suicide attempts as a kid, and I just started digging back and unpeeling layers. So the whole film became this melange of ideas and thoughts all barfed out. And it's like, I think at the end of the day, my biggest takeaway is it's better to talk about this, even if it's in a messy pile, than to not talk about it at all. So that's, I mean, I've grown as a person by making this. I've sort of rethought things that my parents were going through when they were raising me, and how they were ill-equipped to function. But yeah, so it's the film evolved to the point when we were ready to shoot it, and then it evolved after that. But yeah, we got a couple arts council grants, and it just trying to wait for enough key people to come in and help out, and keep key collaborators that I've worked with for years, but who are now far too busy and famous to spend time with me until they've got that little sliver of opportunity. And okay, run, let's go, let's cast, let's get everything ready, let's build some big sets. We got a week, go. So it's a lot of hurry up and wait, like a lot of film is anyway. But that's what my film's about.
Okay, so I'm going to see if I can pull that all into a quick little nutshell.
I probably could too, but you go ahead.
I'm going to say it's an examination of generational trauma that uses kind of an autobiographical look of your own life of dealing with people that survived the concentration camps.
Sure, but that's not hooky enough. It was originally a film about a kid who's terrorized by the Nazi that captured his grandfather in World War II, or like the ghost or spirit or demon of that Nazi. And then it grew to that. Then the end result is it's a film about a film. It's a film about a guy trying to make a film about and failing.
It does have a lot of feel of a documentary style at certain points.
I would almost call it a documentary. It's an experimental magic realism documentary.
Okay.
Check it out, everybody.
Yeah, I think they should. I really do. This, you've already kind of covered, what was your inspiration for it. Just kind of dealing with your own issues, family, past generation, future generation, all of that coming together. So it sounds like this was quite a cathartic film for you when everything was said and done. It kind of helped bring out a lot of your own personal did it help put things to rest for you?
I don't know. I mean, I think right now it's I don't think that stuff is ever put to rest, but it helps to alleviate. It helps to like at least classify some of those ideas. And there's probably a line in this version that I think I make stuff to try and figure out how I feel. So I'm like, I'm going to articulate it in just through imagery that comes to me and themes that come to me, and explore them as best I can, and then kind of step back and go like, wait, what was I saying here? I'm like, oh, that's how I'm feeling. Oh, that's interesting. Definitely not cheaper than therapy, but it's more fun.
Okay. So as you've been going through the process of building this film, it sounds like you've went through a lot of iterations, a lot of hard work. When
Yeah.
all was said and done, what was the one thing you kind of grasped on and went, that is one thing I just really liked or enjoyed in the process of either creating or in the final product?
Oh man, it's a loaded question. Uh, uh, I mean, I like where it got to. I like the honesty there. I like the humor that comes across. I like that my kid's in it. I like that my grandfather's in it before he passed away. I'm super grateful we got to film them. I mean, my cinematographer is a really, really close friend. And he's tearing up. He's like, I'm filming 4 generations of your family on this movie. This is incredible. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do love the scene in the middle where we go back into the old world stuff. Um, but I mean, the idea I definitely wanted to come across, and the idea that I was sort of fighting the most with some people around me was talking about this suicide attempt, and from from very early on, a lot of sort of people around me were trying to say like, okay, just go for the core film. In the middle of this film is this kid scared by his grandfather. It's a great film. It's cool. Just tell that story, and you're like you're trying to take these big leaps and big steps, and they might not work. And from day one or day whatever day it was once we started getting rolling, um, I wanted to take a big swing, and if it missed, that was fine. And um, I didn't just want to make a standard story about a kid being haunted by a Nazi that and his grandfather was summoned through a box and turned into a deer creature that battles them. I didn't want to do that boring old standard story. I wanted to try and articulate some ideas, and especially around the suicide, because what I went through in my head um, ended up being extremely helpful to me. And if there's a way to kind of get that across and convey that, and if there's one person, and whoever many people see this movie, that's like, oh, okay, and that's something that affects them, and they can look at things in that light, then that's if I can help somebody, that's great.
Okay. I
Pretentiously, but
No,
also
actually, I
like
think that really
idealistically.
sums up a lot of it from what I took away from it also. But at Film Quest, where we saw it, you were nominated for a number of awards and you won one.
I did. It was very, very nice. Yeah. got
And
uh got me a little Cthulhu here. That was
and
for best screenplay through with Aurora de Pena, and I won that one, so that's great. It's nice to do that. And a lot of, I mean, some of that was the seeds were all planted ahead of time, but then some of that was editorially, and just diving in, and really chopping up what I'm trying to say and how that matches with the visuals. So that was uh that dialogue between voiceover and what's happening, and then what's on the screen, narratively scripted. That was it was a fun balance to work on.
okay. So it's Demon Box finished with its film festival, or do you still have some that you're showing at?
I think it's pretty early in its run, and I feel like so far the versions that have screened at a few festivals are all still like they would be work in progress versions. So I mean, since then it's like the fully mixed, fully affected one hasn't been seen. It's like it's ready.
Okay.
So I'm hoping it's got a healthy life. So hopefully it's about a year of a run, and get it out online and share it.
All right. So in terms of we got the movie now, in terms of yourself,
Yep.
what can we expect to see from you in the future? You got anything that you're working on?
I do. So after my grandfather passed away at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I was sort of his primary caregiver, but he was a guy who survived the war and lost everybody, and came to Canada where I live, and worked as a tailor in sweatshops, and he was just making pockets. So that was the bulk of what he did, and then in his spare time he would just tinker and make things. Um, and he would get a bunch of scraps of stuff and put it together. And is it going to be a lamp? Is it going to be a pair of pants? Is it going to be a family? Whatever he had to work with, that's sort of what he had. And his house is a good representation of that. And his house was this like very patchwork place. So I decided I would try and make a feature film in his house after he passed away. as a way to capture it. It's like everything was just so unique, and the more I sort of spent time thinking about him, especially working on Demon Box, the more I thought about how his approach really influenced me in a very unconscious way. So spending time thinking about it, I'm like, I have to honor this, and I really want to explore something there. So I decided I took a year off of commercials, which is my main gig, to just spend time in the house and try and write a film before my parents sold it. And so I did. So I spent 3 months trying to just like, we got the location. So is it a time travel film? Are there vampires? So I ended up doing another magic realism film, and shooting it. And the rule I was going to have was like, if it's just me and an actor, or me and a sock puppet and an iPhone, like there's not going to be a production concern that's going to stop me from making this. So whatever I've got in my pocket is what we're going to make it with. And I ended up getting, a few good actors, and pounded out a script and a few very dedicated collaborators. And I'm like, treat it like a documentary. It's going to have magic realism elements. Sure, there's going to be a giant weird puppet and some animals and other stuff, because I like to shoot myself in the foot production wise. But I also know where the light is nice in the house at what time of day, so I've dealt with budgets that are giant and in the negative, so I know I can figure out how to get a day and how to explore and play. And the idea was to try and have people in the house basically tear apart the house for me, so I would cathartically be able to give that to my actors. That's the original intention. So it's a film called Alterations. It's a feature film. I shot it at the end of last year, and then this year has just been the ridiculous amount of family health concerns. So between that and some economics, I haven't gone back and really dove into the edit. So I'm hoping January I'm just diving in there and cutting this bizarre feature film, and doing what my grandfather did, and take these scraps of ideas and never mind the original intention. Like, let's take these scraps of things and let's be excited about what comes out the other side. Like, have that sense of experimentation and inventiveness with it all. That I'm like so stoked and really upset I've got like a 3-hour assembly that's like, it's missing stuff and doesn't make sense. And so like I just want to just pull out what's there, and those sort of improvisational moments that we were able to do with the actors in the spaces are the ones that really kind of sing and make it the film it wants to be.
All right. Sounds like it would be a fun one to see.
Mm-hmm.
So on a personal level, becoming a filmmaker, when you look back over your life, what film or films inspired you to become a filmmaker, and why those particular ones?
Oh man, it's a mix of highbrow and lowbrow. Like, it's Time Bandits, so Terry Gilliam's weird inventiveness, to like RoboCop, to like Verhoeven's approach. I guess a lot of genre stuff. Jan Svankmajer, who's a Czech surrealist animator, he has a movie called Alice that I saw when I was probably far too young. It's really, really bizarre, and it's got taxidermy and a real kid, and it's just inventive and crafty. And then there's some very obscure European stuff that the first girlfriend I had's parents took me to, like a bunch of things. I'm like, oh, okay. But I mean, growing up, art wasn't a thing I was encouraged to do. It was more discouraged from doing it. So it sort of felt as I just kind of had to do it. I was wondering about this the other day. Like, I don't know where it comes from. It's from working class. I'm first generation, so both my parents, my mom was born in transit in France, and my dad was born in Brazil after his dad fled concentration camps. So they did their best to raise me, but they weren't encouraging of the arts, and they weren't necessarily aware of the arts. So financially we didn't have a foothold. And I look around at a lot of filmmakers, and if they didn't have that financial incentive, they at least had belief in themselves. And I think I had to fight for that, and I still struggle with that, which is probably evident in my voiceover. Yeah, I just wanted it's seeing those films. I don't know. I feel like I have to make films. I'm happiest on a set. It's what I love to do, is to tell stories. I think stories are important, and then who tells them and how they're told is also important and also worth looking at right now, especially, which is what my current feature is about.
All right. So just a final question for you.
Yes, sir.
If someone came to you and said, I want to become a filmmaker,
Yep.
what piece of advice would you give them?
Don't. No, it's just do it. Just like there's the barriers are so low right now. It's like you just go and start making stuff and make as much as you can with your friends, by yourself. Grab the really good camera that's in your pocket and just start shooting stuff and telling stories and just trying to figure out your voice. I think my first advice is like quantity over quality first. Like just get that stuff out. It's almost like a first draft. Just start like barfing out ideas and trying new things, and attach your phone to a bungee cord and hang it from somewhere to get a weird shot or pull it back. This just explore your own, try and figure out who you are, what you're trying to say. Also, don't be afraid to fail. Like, don't be afraid to make a bad movie, because you don't have to show it to anyone. But also, like, yeah, there's nothing more freeing than say like, I'm gonna make a piece of shit. Who cares? Like, let's just try it. Maybe it won't be, but it might be. So that doesn't matter.
Yeah, in the writing
don't stop yourself from doing something.
Yeah, in the writing world, we call those trunk novels. You write them, and they go in your trunk, and nobody ever sees them.
Yep.
Okay, hey Sean, it's been a pleasure talking with you. And
Thanks for talking to me.
A little bit about you and your movie. So I want to let everybody know that Sean, I almost said it wrong, Wainstein movie Demon Box is still on the film festival circuit. Look for it. It is a great little, almost like he says, it's a magic realism, but it's got a feel of a documentary, and it's got a feel of a little bit of a character study to it, of looking at multi-generational trauma and how he's dealt with it using the backdrop of his family of coming out of the concentration camps. So
but it's funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful stuff, but it's also it really just pulled everybody in at the audience.
Not all funny.
It was really amazing to see the reactions. Like you said, there's funny in it, and people were just all over it.
Yeah, it was like laughs and cries, and I was overwhelmed by the emotion of people talking to me about the film afterwards. It was extremely kind. I'm grateful for the reception. Thank you for talking. I
recommend everybody to look for it, and later on, I'm sure we'll be seeing it on a bunch of different streaming platforms after it gets through its festival run. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
See you soon.